Today on All Things 80s, can you improve on a classic? Welcome to All Things 80s. Now, as I said in the beginning there, can you improve on a classic? Well, the classic, of course, being the 1977 Luke Skywalker A New Hope figure by Kenner. Now, this one is one of the most iconic vintage Star Wars figures there are, and what I've done is I've assembled a collection of all the officially re-released versions of this figure to sort of see how they can compare to the original classic. So we'll go through these one by one, we'll do some side-by-side comparisons, and at the end we'll determine if it is at all possible to improve on a classic. So obviously this is the classic 1977 figure by Kenner, and this was one of my personal favorites as a child. And you know, as I've said in many of these videos, I foolishly sold my own collection many years ago, and you know, I took amazing care of my toys as a child, and all my figures when they were sold were absolutely mint condition. Especially this one, which does not age well. You'll see many of these for sale, and the white robe has completely turned yellow. The hair has all been, the painting of the hair has been flaked off. In many cases, he's missing the the painted on eyes. 90% are missing the original lightsaber, and if it does have the lightsaber, it's probably missing the tip. So it took a while to hunt down one of these, and this was as good as I could find. So this is the one we're going to be using as our baseline for this test. So first up, we're going to look at the 1995 Power of the Force Classic Collection Luke Skywalker figure. Right, so first up, from 1995, this is the Power of the Force Classic Collection Luke Skywalker. And at first glance, it looks pretty good. And that is at first glance. Once you get closer, you realize that this is actually a terrible action figure in so many ways. The most glaring reason why it's a terrible figure is they've actually cast the legs in different lengths. There's a good 2, maybe even 3 millimeters difference in the length of his legs. And as such, it is very difficult to get him to stand up. Not only are they different lengths of legs, his feet are kind of cocked inwards. And the claim they made on the box for these was that these were cast from genuine vintage action figures. So I'm not sure if back then it was some sort of issue with the process, but everything about this figure is much, much smaller than the original. And that is especially noticeable in the head size. You know, there was a reason that Kenner changed the vintage Han Solo head size, because the first one they put out with the small head, it just looked ridiculous. This one likewise, whilst in proportion to his body it's not quite so bad, it's extremely noticeable just how small his head is. Sculpt wise on the body, it's decent, it's not bad at all. The plastic feels similar to a classic vintage version. The lightsaber is an odd plastic they've used. It's a much lighter color, and the tip is actually quite strong in comparison to a genuine vintage one, which is no bad thing given how easily these things break off. But in terms of whether or not they recreated or they could improve on a classic icon, this is absolutely not even close in terms of appearance and quality as the original was. This one is pretty much garbage, if I'm being absolutely honest. From a distance, yeah, it looks okay, but when you actually really inspect it close up and you see the sort of weird sizing, especially in the legs, it doesn't come close. So this one is junk. So next in line, This is a 2017 release. This is the Jumbo series from Gentle Giant, and when I say 2017 release, this one came from the early bird box set. It is in fact the double telescoping version, but for the purposes of this comparison, we'll just pretend it's the normal Luke Skywalker figure. Now, when these were first announced, was it back in 2010, I was fully on board with the idea, as I saw this as a way to kind of right the wrong of having sold all my vintage Star Wars figures. I thought, you know what, I can recollect these, you know, over the course of a number of years, and that'll kind of make me happy to have Star Wars figures again. However, when they were first released, I ordered the first two that were available, which was Han Solo and Chewbacca. And when I got them in the mail, I was absolutely shocked just by the scale of things. Not so much the size of the figure, I was expecting that, but it was the size of the card back. It was absolutely huge. And I just realized there and then that I can't collect these purely from a space standpoint. I don't have the room to collect such a large item, plus there would be so many of them. So I returned those and never looked back. When I thought about doing this video, I thought it'd be nice to add this because it is an official re-release. So I bought this one, and luckily enough, Gentle Giant in 2017 did the early bird box set with 4 of these figures, and someone on eBay, obviously out to make a buck, bought the box set, split them up, sold them individually. So I got this for a very reasonable price. Now, in terms of sculpting and everything, it really is, it's pretty much identical to the classic, which is obvious given, you know, the technology we have today with 3D scanning and whatnot. The plastic used is a very strange plastic. It doesn't have that feel of the vintage, and also as well, the figure doesn't, or these figures don't work in this scale. You know, nowadays a figure of this size would be just like the actor, possibly, you know, fabric clothing, interchangeable hands, etc. This is kind of a big dumb lump of plastic, if I'm being honest. It's not something I'm particularly going to display or cherish, but like I said, I got this for the sake of this video, just to sort of show you the official re-releases, and you know, you can see in comparison to the original, it's huge, and it just doesn't look all that good. So this one doesn't come anywhere close to replicating an iconic piece of history. So this one, nope. And here we are, 2019 Retro Collection. This one is good. I have to say, this is a good attempt at getting pretty close to replicating an icon. At first glance, you'd be hard-pressed to tell it wasn't an original, but it's obvious it's not, purely because it's so clean, it's so white. The hair is actually extremely bright yellow. Interestingly enough, the face sculpt, it's close, but it's not exactly the same. It seems as if it's a softer sculpt. But ironically, the clothing or his robes have a slightly deeper sculpt to them in terms of the, you know, the wrinkles and the folds. But then down at the legs, his boots or the wrappings from his boots are not as deeply sculpted as they are on the original. So it's a strange mixture of face is less well sculpted, torso is slightly better sculpted, and the legs and boots are softer sculpted again. The hair, there's less detail, or it could just be because there's more paint applied, but it seems to me as if there's less detailing in the hair. And like I said, the yellow, or the fresh yellow paint, is just way too bright. Apart from that, you know, it's very, very close. Obviously, you can tell purely because of its newness. There's I very much doubt there are 1977 versions floating around that is this pristine. Lightsaber it's okay, much better than the 1995 attempt, but these are never going to pass off as being originals. Let's just get that out the way straight off. Absolutely different. It's a different plastic, and it's different enough that you can tell it's not original. Plus the tip is slightly shorter than that of an original. The footprint is also slightly smaller than the original. But as far as replicating a classic, almost, very, very close. I do like it. You know, if you're trying to create a complete collection, and you know, as with the Luke Skywalkers, they're very prone to yellowing. If you want a nice, pristine version of Luke Skywalker as part of your vintage collection, this might do the job. You may have to sort of tone down the yellow paint of the hair a little bit, but aside from that, they've done a fantastic job. And like I said, it's ever so slightly smaller, but not to the point where it's noticeable. So yeah, you know, of course, these sold out at the pre-order stage at Target, so I had to pay, I think it was 3 times retail on eBay to get hold of one of these for this video, which was slightly annoying. Target still don't know when they're getting them back in stock, but I think I'm going to collect all 6. I already have the Tarkin, so I'm going to collect these because they are nice, and it's nice to have a pristine, like an absolute pristine version of these figures. Like I said, this was the best one I could find, and this was rather expensive. But yeah, I'm reasonably happy with this 2019 version. So if you're in the market for these, you can absolutely avoid the 1995. That was just a terrible, terrible attempt at recreating something that's so classic and so important to a lot of us. The jumbo versions, if you're into those, you're into those. I'm not, but 2019's Retro Collection, it's not bad. It's not at all bad. So once they come back in stock, and for $10, can't go wrong. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please like, please do subscribe, and see you in the next video.